Hello, I'm Eitan Shalom. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, a Chinese medicine herbalist, and an Ayurvedic practitioner. I offer acupuncture treatments in the classical Chinese style. I also offer dry needling for trigger point pain, which is a modern anatomy-based form of needling. I offer classical Chinese herbalism. I also offer nutritional counseling and Ayurvedic consultations to determine your dosha and your imbalances and how to treat them with Ayurvedic medicine. I also teach mindfulness meditation. Disease occurs when there's a perfect storm of negative factors, and healing occurs when there's a perfect storm of positive factors. Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, for me, integrate what to me is the best of Asian philosophy with the best of natural healing. Hello, it's Eitan Shalom at the Body Mind Wellness Center. Tomorrow is World Book Day, and so I would like to share with you my 3 favorite books for learning how to meditate. One is Calming Your Anxious Mind by Dr. Jeffrey Brantley, MD. The second is Insight Meditation by Joseph Goldstein. And the third is a book simply called Meditations by Thanissaro Bhikkhu, or also known as Ajahn Jeff. Ajahn Jeff Thanissaro Bhikkhu is a Buddhist monk in the Thai forest monastery tradition, whose monastery is in San Diego County, actually. Why do I want to share with you books on meditation? Because I practice Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. And Chinese medicine states really clearly that the mind leads the qi. It then states that the source of disease is stagnation of qi. So when we don't have control of our mind, which none of us are born with, we have to learn how to have control over our minds. And when we say control over the mind, we don't mean mind over matter. We mean seeing things as they are and being aware in real time of how our nervous system is responding to things we have attraction to and things that we have aversion to. Things that we have attraction to can make us sick. For example, too much chocolate ice cream, too much sweet food, staying up until 2 in the morning. But especially things that we have aversion to, things that we don't like, make us ill, because when we have aversion, we tend to go into either the fight or flight response. And the fight or flight response has a whole cascade of biochemical effects that can influence illness and be the actual root of illness. So, the first book I want to talk about, Calming Your Anxious Mind, is by Jeffrey Brantley, MD. And you'll notice the title of this book, Calming Your Anxious Mind, suggests that it's a book that's targeting people with anxiety disorders. Indeed, this is an excellent book for people with anxiety disorders, but anxiety is the human condition. All of us experience anxiousness and fear throughout our lives. And this medical doctor, what he's done is he's taken all of the basic principles of what's now called mindfulness practice and explained them really clearly without any of the religious component. Mindfulness practice does come from Buddhism, but I have evangelical Christians studying this book in order to become better Christians. So what he's done is taken all of the religious material out of it and just given you the clearest instruction in the English language that I have found for learning how to meditate, and learning how to meditate in the tradition of mindfulness practice. The basis of all mindfulness meditation, and in fact of all Buddhist meditation, is mindfulness of the in and out breath. Mindfulness of breathing, awareness of breathing. It's not breathing exercises such as that you have in yoga, which is called pranayama, but awareness of your natural breath. That's the starting point. So if you get this book, Calming Your Anxious Mind, what I like about it is the first half of the book gives you all of the philosophical and intellectual underpinning for a mindfulness meditation practice. By all means, when you get this book, do read the whole book. But the second half of the book, you can jump right in. The second half of the book has 5 sections that are the how to do part, practicing mindfulness. 1 is mindfulness in everyday life. 2 is establishing mindfulness breath by breath. That's the nitty-gritty of mindfulness meditation. 3 is mindfulness of the body. That's what we call body scanning, and I have a separate video, I have a few videos showing you how to do body scanning. And then there's a few other meditations that he has, bringing full attention to life. How to bring attention to the good and bad of life, as opposed to avoiding the bad parts of life. So, and then the part 3, for people who do have issues with fear, anxiety, or even panic disorders, the third part of the book is applying mindfulness to those specific aspects of life. Feeling safe, resting in silence, applying mindfulness to fear and anxiety. So this is a fabulous book. Hundreds and hundreds of my patients have gotten this book over the last 20 years and benefited from it, and I have benefited from this book a lot. The second book I'd like to talk about is Insight Meditation by Joseph Goldstein. Joseph Goldstein is a long-term meditation practitioner in one of the traditions of Buddhism as found in Burma, what used to be called Burma, Myanmar. And he's one of the founders of the Insight Meditation Society, along with a few other people. The Insight Meditation Society has a branch on the East Coast in Massachusetts and another branch up in the Bay Area, and they have wonderful teaching and meditation retreats. And what do I like about this book is that it does represent a slightly different style of Buddhist meditation, of mindfulness practice, or what they call insight meditation. And by that title, it'll give you the sense that their style of meditation is a little bit, tiny bit psychological by comparison. And the fundamental difference is in the meditation technique. That's the actual only difference. In the world of Buddhist meditation from the southern Buddhist countries, what's called Theravada Buddhism, the Buddhism that's found in Sri Lanka and Burma and Cambodia, I might be leaving someplace out, Myanmar and Cambodia. There's a difference between people that practice a technique called noting and those that don't. So in this book, he teaches us how to use noting. And when you're noting is simply that when you're meditating and you've begun with mindfulness of the in and out breath, and you get distracted by a strong feeling, you note the feeling. It's a kind of a way of acknowledging it and seeing things how they are, and getting comfortable with the things that make you uncomfortable. So if you're meditating in this technique, if you're meditating and you feel pain, or you're meditating and you suddenly feel a wave of anger, you don't just pay attention to the breath, you actually allow yourself to note anger or burning, aching. And I find that very helpful for helping those of us who were taught to repress our feelings and not pay attention to what we feel, because maybe in one person's case they were always told they were wrong when they reported a feeling. That's an aspect of this that I find helpful. The other thing that's really lovely about this book is actually what are called Dharma Talks from a retreat. Here's one, Fear Itself. Here's another one, Freeing the Mind, Liberating Emotions, Spontaneity in Practice, Understanding Pain. So they're little 2-page lessons that you can integrate really well. For example, understanding pain. You know, pain's a really good one because, in fact, some meditation teachers will talk about how you're really lucky if you have pain when you meditate, because pain's very compelling. You can't, it's very hard to escape pain. So it's very easy to focus your awareness on pain. But our natural tendency is to avoid pain. It's why we have a epidemic of opiate addiction in our country and alcoholism. People self-medicate to avoid pain, both physical pain and emotional pain. So this is a very good book, as is Calming Your Anxious Mind, for learning how to become comfortable with things that make you uncomfortable. Whether it's your husband or wife being angry at you, or when you're a little child and your mother promises you chocolate ice cream and you go to the store and there's no chocolate ice cream and you get upset. That's a silly example, but it's a real one for a child. But dealing with loss, the death of a loved one. How can you, when you lose a loved one, how do you experience grief and loss without being overwhelmed by it? And learning to be present with grief, to be present with loss, that's another aspect of that. So that's Insight Meditation by Joseph Goldstein. Now let me take a minute and talk about Thanissaro Bhikkhu, whose American name is Ajahn Jeff. Ajahn is a title given to Buddhist monks, and his original name is Jeffrey, I don't remember his original last name, but his Buddhist name is Thanissaro Bhikkhu. He's an excellent meditation teacher. He's the only one of these people that's an actual practicing monk. His style of Buddhist meditation seems to me, because he's in the Thai forest monastery tradition, to have integrated some things that we would associate with almost with yoga. And to contrast with the other two traditions where you're being mindful of your in and out breath. This is one of his many books. So Ajahn Jeff, Thanissaro Bhikkhu, and this particular book is called Meditations, but he has many books that are very valuable, and he has online meditation talks, and we're going to post the contact info for that. What I love about his style of meditation lessons, and I just say one thing, because he's a Buddhist monk, there'll be plenty of Buddhism in it, depending on the lesson. But when it comes to the actual method of meditation, what I learned from him that I find very, very valuable is this idea of spreading the breath sensations through the whole body. And he talks about how, because we associate paying attention with a certain tightening, that it's very easy when you're practicing mindfulness of the in and out breath to sort of get a little tense and tight. And so then he talks about spreading the breath sensations through the whole body, which is a practice where when you're being mindful of your breath sensations, at the same time you pay attention to your entire body in that moment in time and space. And he talks about being immersed in the breath. And he also talks about, which the other people don't in the same way, the enormous pleasurableness, the pleasurable sensation of being immersed in the breath. And that's really helpful for people with addiction issues, actually, where when you start to experience pleasure in being immersed in the breath, meditation stops being work and starts to become pleasurable. I mean, meditation for me, since I first started learning it when I was 17, has always been pleasurable. But the being immersed in the breath, that's especially pleasurable because you feel quite energized by that. So that's Ajahn Jeff. So that's the three books that I wanted to talk about. Calming Your Anxious Mind by Jeffrey Brantley, Insight Meditation by Joseph Goldstein, and Meditations by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Any one of these three books is a great place to start. Any one of these three books would be enough to study for the rest of your life. Years ago, a brief anecdote apropos to that, because we as Americans, we expect to learn everything fast. We're very impatient by nature. Time is money. Years ago, I was asked to teach mindfulness to an old man who was 82. He was a retired psychologist, interestingly, with an anxiety disorder. But he was an industrial psychologist, so he wasn't very, he hadn't been a therapist, and he wasn't especially psychodynamically minded, though he was open to that. And so I appeared at his house. I worked with him for about a year, and he had a bad anxiety disorder with insomnia, and he was 82. And I brought this book with me, The Calming Your Anxious Mind. And I gave him the book, and we met each week, and I taught him how to meditate, and then we discussed his experiences, and he would ask me questions, and I would clarify. But my point I wanted to make is, after about 6 months, his copy of this book was so worn out that I had to get him another one, because being retired, he was studying it, and he was a very smart man. He'd had a good career as an industrial psychologist, and he was studying it page by page in a very intellectual way. Some of the things that were hard for him would be things like the idea of spreading the breath sensations. It was such a foreign concept for him that I was able to explain it to him. So my point being that I've introduced 3 books. Start with one, choose one, whichever one appeals to you, and really work with it and make it your own, and be patient. The last thing I want to say about that is, if you have a regular meditation practice, every time you sit down to meditate, even the day that you have the most miserable meditation and you don't do well, you still get credit. You still sat and meditated. There's still a benefit from it. So even the worst meditation is a good meditation. Even the most unsuccessful meditation is successful. So be kind to yourself. Be generous with yourself. You can't be perfectionist about learning meditation, because you're not going to be perfect. In fact, you won't be perfect in this lifetime. I'm sorry to say that. Maybe one person on the earth. So be happy with your meditation practice, and by all means, get one of these books. Thank you so much.